Hey everyone, we're just going to wait a minute or two, see who else wants to join. And I'll turn off my camera, but I'll be back in just a minute. Got some nice grooving music going here, and we'll turn that off. All right. Thanks for joining. This is not my first webinar, but it is the first time we're trying LinkedIn Live. So hopefully all goes well. Drop me a comment to let me know that you can hear me clearly, or in general, tell me how you're doing, where you're located, anything, so I see some live action on the other side of this thing. I do see some familiar names from the Guardz community, so that's good. Glad to have you guys join today. And let's get started. I'm Doni Brass. I've been in the security and tech industry for some time now. I built products that many of you may be familiar with, such as Cisco Umbrella, LogMe and Rescue. And currently I lead product at Guardz. Guardz is at an exciting time in our journey as our community of partners continues to grow and our product continues to mature. Our mission is to bring cybersecurity to small and medium-sized businesses through our MSPs. And for me, a large part of that is finding ways to contribute to our MSP community. This webinar is not a product pitch, and I'll save the one or two Guardz specific slides for the end. But instead, I really want this to be about sharing stories around account compromise and how real businesses are impacted every day. I think this sharing of stories is a great way to educate each other and ultimately educate the end customers and businesses who are likely going to be the ones impacted by these types of threats. So I'll try to limit the use of any real company names or use fake names when needed, but the goal here is to imprint some stories in your head that you can share with others and continue to think about as you go about building cybersecurity tools for your platforms, for your teams, for your customers. So let me start by taking you to a Monday morning at this made-up Technova Solutions, a bustling mid-size tech company. The setup, scene one. Sarah, the head of finance, got an email in the morning. It looked like it was from the CEO, Mark, requesting an urgent wire transfer for a last-minute business opportunity. The email read professionally, the tone was urgent, and the request seemed plausible given their recent expansion talks and business opportunities that have come through recently. Scene 2, the mistake. Without a second thought, Sarah initiated the transfer. After all, requests like these weren't uncommon, and the email had Mark's usual sign-off. This is where things took a turn. Mark hadn't sent that email. In fact, he was on a flight to a conference, completely unaware of what was unfolding back at the office. So scene 3, the revelation. By the time Mark landed, he turned on his phone. It was too late. Technova's bank account was lighter by a substantial sum. The email Sarah received was revealed to be a sophisticated spear phishing attack. The attackers had studied Mark's communication style, his signature, and timed his email perfectly with a known trip. So this incident not only cost Technova financially, but it also shook the trust within their team and among their clients. The question that arose was, how could this happen? And today we're here to dissect such incidents, understand the intricacies of account compromise, and most importantly, learn how to shield ourselves and our businesses from such deceptive threats. So just an example, I wanted to set the stage. I do also want to share some statistics and get everyone on the same page a little bit more about account compromise. But we've seen, somewhere around $2.7 billion in losses globally, in the US in the last year. This was reported by the FBI, specifically around account compromise, or in some cases, business email compromise. Almost 94% of that was a combination of account compromise and data breach, which are motivated by financial fraud. So really the goal for most of these is that financial fraud. Nearly half of emails alone are considered spam, with a quarter of that being fraud and almost 70% of that being attempted identity theft. And then finally, about 50% of social engineering incidents are focused on these account compromise attacks with the goal of doing these account takeovers. So this is industry data, but again, I want to kind of level set around what I mean when I'm talking about account compromise. So it's simply defined as unauthorized access to accounts leading to potential misuse. This is a critical vector of risk, right? Especially for MSPs who are the front line of defense for their clients. And understanding the target mechanisms and the impact is key to building defense strategies. So I want to dive deeper into those mechanisms and those impacts, and then we'll go into some more real-world examples. So when we talk about target mechanisms, this is what facilitates, this is how an attacker views an organization and the ways that they can get in and penetrate the organization. So email is obviously one of the most common attack vectors in general, and we see this feel this on a daily basis. From the most basic scams out of Nigeria to the more common phishing attacks, or even the most sophisticated spear phishing or targeted spear phishing attacks. Email continues to be the mechanism of choice for a large percentage of hackers, and that's for good reason. It's because it's cheap, it has broad reach, and in general, people are lazy, meaning getting people to click a link has been, traditionally been, not too challenging, and it's getting even easier with generative AI and attack as a service, which are, tools that hackers can subscribe to that have all kinds of built-in mechanisms for very, out of the box emails and out of the box landing pages that really deceive users quite easily. So emails, really, I'd say one of the most common, but system vulnerabilities do remain a really, really important mechanism to initiate an attack. There's tons of tools out there to scan the open web and find vulnerable servers or outdated systems and known CVEs exposed. Once these targets have been identified, exploiting them can be as easy as leveraging a malicious website, a known backdoor in the software, or even running a script after gaining physical access to a terminal. So all of these kinds of things are huge vulnerabilities, and the mechanism that hackers use that lead to account compromise. Some examples in the real world would be WannaCry, that exploited some Microsoft protocols. I think it was called External Blue, and it impacted public hospitals all over the UK. I think it likely started with some kind of USB terminal. Yeah, USB, on an unattended terminal, and it spread across all the vulnerable machines and installed the ransomware in that particular case. So this is one example of using systems. Social media is another mechanism that's becoming more and more popular. Social media is kind of ground zero for so many targeted attacks, right? It's social engineering is more and more common. People are easily manipulated when they see a familiar face, and we all know how easy it is to fake that familiar face. And creating a social account that mimics a real one, family, colleagues, influencers, it's very, very simple, and it can lead to many opportunities for an attack. And then finally here, cloud services and cloud storage are frequent targets for many reasons. We all use SaaS, PaaS, IaaS every day. We use it for productivity and collaboration, and it's often at the expense of security, right? They're easily accessible, they store our most sensitive data, and they're frequently misconfigured. The cloud can be both the mechanism for penetrating an org as well as the end game, meaning that's where the data and the real windfall can be. So we're seeing more and more many APTs, advanced persistent threats. They sit comfortably in the cloud. They use the permissions that they can get granted to dig their claws deeper, to spread out to other systems, to other users, even going on premise in times. But this has become a more common mechanism as well, and is only growing. So those are the mechanisms, but what is the impact? So the impact are things like, payouts and fraud. Small businesses can face financial ruin if hit with unauthorized transactions, ransomware payouts, or financial fraud. Like the story I told earlier, where business email compromise led to the large wire transfer, and then that money went right into the hackers' accounts. So that's still the most common, payouts and fraud. Social and reputation harm, this is growing, right? Public trust is important. Brand image is important. And once there's damage to a company's reputation, it erodes public trust. We've also seen backlash due to breaches where that can have a very, very high cost and can be almost impossible to reverse. On the legal side, we see lots of compliance violations and legal repercussions to those. We see that in laws like GDPR and HIPAA. These can lead to hefty fines and legal proceedings. And on the operational side, downtimes can be a loss of productivity and even loss of an entire business when an attack paralyzes critical business systems. Data loss and liability, we know these as well. Irreversible damage if you lose customer IP, if you lose your own IP or customer data, sensitive information that can really cripple a business and lead to liabilities when that data is compromised. Ultimately, all of these things are interconnected, right? So a breach in one area quickly leads and cascades to the other. So none of this lives in a silo. It's all interdependent. So I want to do a little more of the storytelling and make sure you walk away today with clear pictures in your head about what is happening every day with these common attacks. Many of you know it because you've lived it. You've heard the stories, of course, and I'm sure in this MSP community, a lot of you roll up your sleeves on a regular basis to try to intervene, to prevent, to mitigate, and to even do root cause analysis after these things happen. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the different layers. We're going to start simple, and we'll go to the more complicated ones. So brute force, this is one of the most classic. Attackers, have automations that repeatedly try common passwords just to hack into accounts. So simple users who don't have MFA and use simple passwords are super vulnerable. Leaked credentials is another really common area. The dark web is full of lists of usernames and passwords. You can try these. If you have a specific user and password, you can try going after that on a dedicated system. If I skip to the last one, credential stuffing, that's a similar thing where you're taking previously breached credentials and you're just stuffing it into tons of websites and just hoping that one of them hits and is successful. And then of course, phishing, right? We all know phishing, email scam tricks that reveal, gets users to reveal their passwords, mimic a popular landing page or login page and steal their credentials. So these are probably the most basic and the most common attack methods, but things are getting more complicated. And I consider these the intermediate level attacks. They're more targeted. Things like invoice schemes. Also, like I similar to when I described earlier that they did the bank transfer, Attackers when they know a company's vendor, it becomes easy to send fake invoice and reroute payments. It's going to get even more extreme if they're in the system already as an APT and they're monitoring. They know when in the month these invoices go out. They can even intercept a real invoice and replace it with their own. So there's all kinds of invoice schemes that are out there today. CEO or leadership spoofing. When you get an email that looks like it's from your boss, you act differently. You sometimes act hastily. Spear phishing. This is again where you're being targeted as a user. We want to trick an employee into revealing their specific credentials under the guise of password resets or systems that they know that they use. So that's the one of the most targeted and common types of attacks. And then ultimately credential theft. I consider this more like the man in the middle approach, logging into their a work account over compromised Wi-Fi, interception of the credentials, and sending a user to either a different login page or just stealing the credentials and running away with them. So these are intermediate level, but I think it all gets even more interesting when you get into some of these advanced ones. So let's talk about some of these. I think these are the most interesting ones to discuss. So OAuth tricks. These aren't official names, by the way. I kind of threw some of these titles in here from my own experience, but OAuth tricks. This is about using third-party apps for access to email and drives and really whatever system in the cloud companies have. So OAuth is basically when you're granting a third-party app permissions through the cloud, right? And it's super useful for productivity. We gain a lot of productivity. It's the permissions we grant every day, even Guardz. This is how we authorize our customers, and it's quickly offset. The productivity is quickly offset when it's abused. So the real risk here is that it doesn't matter if you've granted a third-party app permission into your cloud or your email, etc. It doesn't matter if your passwords are changed. Doesn't matter if MFA is enabled. If those OAuth grants, unless they're set to timeout, those will persist and will often persist unnoticed. They aren't logged. The activity isn't logged in the traditional way. So let's talk about some examples. So let's say an employee receives an email promoting a new productivity tool that requires some kind of access to their email and file storage for full integration. We're very, very quick to click through those permissions and get to the good stuff. So trusting the professional looking email, it's very common, and I've seen it firsthand. People will click the link and authorize the app. What they don't realize is that app can be malicious. It can harvest emails and documents depending on the access it has. And now those attackers have unrestricted access to the data and the correspondence. And again, it goes sort of silently in the background. There was a really cool one. It was even like 6-7 years ago. It was the first time I saw it. Google was pretty naive with how they allowed people to create OAuth applications back then. They've gotten much stricter, but someone created a Google Docs app. So they created an OAuth app called Google Docs. They even put the logo that looked just like the Google Docs logo. And they launched this app and they did some phishing attacks and they got a few people to click on it. And the app really just asked for permission to the drive and to email. So two things could happen. Two things did happen, I should say. Luckily, it wasn't too malicious. It was more of a test to just see about spreading itself. But they basically just blasted out to everybody in their org, hey, check out this doc. I need your approval, or I need you to look at it. And anyone who clicked on that link normally get a pop-up that said Google Docs, and they would just logically grant the permission required there. Again, back to their email and to their Google Docs or to their Google Drive. And that quickly spread across organizations and then continued to sort of perpetrate itself in that way to anyone in the contact list, anyone even outside the org. It would continue to spread itself. Now, it went a step further as well, where it created a document in Google Drive that had a link. Now, luckily, that link wasn't malicious again, but it had a link, and it just sent out an invite to share to that document that just said, I have set up a survey for you to check out. I want your approval on it. And that link, they clicked it, took them to an empty survey page. But again, you can imagine the payload could have been delivered multiple different ways, through the email, through Google Drive itself, and then, of course, through that malicious link that was in those documents. So Pretty scary stuff. Google got smarter and they started having an approval process, but it's still very easy for someone to spin up an app and put permissions in there and for those to have malicious intent. It's hard. You can't have the Google name on it anymore, but you can still get away with a lot. So what's the impact? If given email access, it can spread through the organization. If given cloud storage access, it can share documents and malicious links and take advantage of the collaboration capabilities of these tools. If given admin access, you can imagine it can loosen the restrictions across an organization and then attempt further attacks. Data and emails can be completely backed up and stolen. They can also be exfiltrated or encrypted in different ways. And emails can be redirected through the creation of email mailbox rules or even RSS feeds I've seen. So all of this is classic use of OAuth tricks. Very hard to mitigate, very hard to monitor, and very hard to teach users to be aware of. So certainly something that's worth telling the story about and worth educating your employees and your customers on those fronts. Okay, another one, I call it double trouble. This is a common one that we see all the time. This is quite advanced if it's done right, but it's the use of account compromise in order to facilitate account compromise. So you'll compromise a low-level employee of the company, a new employee who could be vulnerable. People post all over social media when they're starting a new job. It's easy to go after them, get them to do something silly, get their credentials, and then use their email, their access to try to get someone higher up in the company or someone in the finance department to give away more compromising information. So this is about gaining access through a weak link in the organization and then waiting to determine who the real target is. So what was the example I had in mind? I've seen it with suppliers. So if you can mimic a supplier and try to get an employee to think you're the real supplier, so you can compromise their account, and then you can wait for an interaction in the finance department from that supplier, and you can try to get that employee to act as such, right? So you can get that employee to act as if they're interacting with the supplier in a real way, and then change the billing information and get someone who can sign off on a transfer or et cetera to make that transaction. It really hurts long-term relationships with the real supplier. Money gets transferred to the wrong accounts, and everyone faces some kind of loss. I think the impact to think about here is that no one is safe inside an org, right? We want to trust our colleagues, we want to trust our partners, but we have to have a certain level of skepticism in order to keep ourselves safe, right? Supply chains can be disrupted, operations can be destroyed, trust is eroded, and sometimes it can't be repaired, and ultimately financial and credit can be ruined. So really significant type of attack and quite mature in the approach, right? The idea of manipulating one in order to kind of go deeper and deeper. Dating and sites and personal manipulation. This one's quite brutal, right? It's playing at people's hearts, playing at people's vulnerabilities. It hurts them emotionally and psychologically. An example I heard recently, an attacker created a very convincing profile on a dating site. They targeted specific individuals in the company in high value industries. Okay, so we're talking in known high value industries and construction in this particular case. After establishing this romantic connection, they started to extract personal and work related information. The data was used to gain access to that user's corporate network. So it was actually credentials to use and access to their VPN to get onto the network, posing as that individual. The relationship continued to appear genuine. So over weeks or months, that attacker slowly gained more and more access to information. And by the time the victim realized anything was amiss, the damage was quite extensive, both personally and professionally. Their reputation in the company was ruined. They were accused and even presented legal action against them. And the attacker had not only stolen a whole bunch of information, but actually caused some damage, seemed like just for malicious purposes. So what was the impact in this case? It was loss of PII, PCI, and even in some cases, I believe PHI I've seen. Destruction of the employee-employer trust, the job was lost ultimately. There was career and reputational damage. So this one is really prying on people's weaknesses. And the next one is similarly cruel, often prying on people's need and vulnerabilities around needing work and their their desperation that can sometimes come when someone is looking for a job. But we've seen these hiring and these recruiting scams. They're often around LinkedIn. An attacker typically will impersonate a recruiter for a well-known company. I've seen it with Google myself. They reach out to the job seekers on LinkedIn. They offer very attractive, high-paying jobs. They conduct fake interviews. I mean, these are quite sophisticated. So it's usually multiple fake interviews. They build that credibility. Eventually, they start to request personal information. Sometimes they'll, invite them to a visit on site, and they say, "We're going to book some flights for you. We need your, personal information for travel, for booking of the flights." Sometimes they'll ask for credit information to guarantee. I just need to hold a deposit to guarantee the flight, but we're paying for it. They'll ask for personal information for a background check or for payroll. And these unsuspecting job seekers are, this is a great opportunity. So they're really lured in. They want to comply. They want it to be real. They need it to be real. And they find themselves victims of identity theft, financial fraud, and sometimes worse. It's very sophisticated scam. Right? It involves a hacker who can speak face to face and impersonate the idea of a recruiter. And it exploits the trust and aspirations of the job seeker. It can be very hurtful. It involves identity theft, financial fraud, and can be extreme data loss in many situations. And the last one I'm going to do for now is around this AI-driven impersonation. And these are getting scarily good and better by the week. The last version I saw was really using a very advanced AI technology to create a deep fake audio clip of a CEO. In the audio, the CEO urgently requests the finance department to process a large confidential transaction to a new vendor. The voice is real, convincingly real. It leads the finance team to comply without hesitation. Only, shortly after the transaction is done, does the company even realize that the transaction was fraudulent and that this urgent request never came from the actual CEO. But by then, the funds had been, redistributed 5-6 times over and was pretty much untraceable. And this sophisticated impersonation really showcases the alarming effects of AI in cyber fraud. We are always talking about how the hackers are using AI, and we need to use AI in order to mitigate it. And there's lots of ways that we're going to do that. But this is using AI to defraud people on a personal level. Could be on the phone and other video chats. It will be very, very difficult to offset this in any way except by educating the employees and preparing them for the idea of second guessing everything, always asking questions, always having that nagging voice in the back of their head that's challenging them to always double check any financial transactions, to double check any urgent requests that come from people in power. So it's unlimited impact and business damage for something like this. It creates financial fraud, legal and liability, huge data loss, and of course reputational harm can come from this. So there's lots of really cool videos on the internet. Some target political people and impersonate in this different ways, all these deep fakes. But there are also some really scary examples of how this is happening in the real world. It's only going to get worse. So, all right, moving on. My goal was to do this in 30 minutes, and I think we're gonna just go a couple minutes over. So I appreciate your time. I like these quick webinars, not long ones. Hearing these stories and gaining a stronger understanding of the risk that businesses face. This is an important part of navigating the world of cybersecurity. Storytelling is a skill we all need to work on. It's great you have to teach your customers, your prospects, and even your techs, your employees about why security is so important and how these impact companies in the real world. Guiding your customers through best practices, facilitating training. This will all help them participate in a healthy and secure environment that puts the employee first. And it's really essential. When I talk about Guardz, I look at Guardz as a holistic cybersecurity platform. And this is one of the biggest advantages that you can see in the way that Guardz can be deployed to your customers. It's an all-in-one solution that solves problems by connecting the dots, right? If you ask the best email tool out there, how do you protect against phishing? They'll tell you, we have the best phishing AI mechanism to identify phishing and prevent it. But nothing's 100%. Things will always get through. The way Guardz approaches this is a multi-layered approach. And all of these systems talk together. We don't need a SIM. We don't need another system to be in between this. All these systems are directly working together. So a phishing attack, we look from the beginning at the external scan. We look at DKIM, DMARC, SPF. Is the system secure? Can it be spoofed? Can we prevent it? Still, phishing emails come in. Our phishing email security is designed to block attacks, block those phishing attacks, identify spam, viruses, scripts, impersonation, you name it. We try to block that at the source. Still, some get through. We have our awareness training and our phishing simulation to prepare the employees, make sure they're ready to identify these things and not follow that link. Still, some will click a link. We have our browsing security that makes sure that, okay, which users are the hotspots? Where's the most risk lie? Who's going to malicious sites? And then, of course, still they're going to click a link on a website and download something onto their device. We have our endpoint security. We're looking at what's happening on that device. What are the threats? We integrate with Defender to block those threats. And we also monitor processes and auto runs and have early ransomware detection to identify an attack is actually happening. Let's isolate that device and let's prevent it from going any further. So this is all the holistic approach. It doesn't mean you're buying a bundle, but rather you're getting a system that works in this unified and consolidated manner. It's an integrated backbone for the platform. It connects the dots from detections to attack. Look, an enterprise will invest in 10, 20, even 50 security tools with a dedicated team to cover every use case. MSPs don't have the same problem of scale that enterprise has, but you do have limitations on what you can manage, and your hours and your time is the most valuable thing. So this is how Guardz wants to work with the MSP community. This is what we're passionate about. We want to embed ourselves as much as possible into the MSP community and the world between MSPs and their customers. And we're here to help, and we're here to consult. We're here to help you solve the problems. We're here to keep SMBs secure, and we hope to do that with you. Thanks for your time today. If there's any questions, I'll hang around. You can drop them into the comments, and I'll try to address them. And otherwise, thank you for your time, and I wish you a great rest of the week. I'm gonna put on some of that background music while some of these comments come in. So for the first question, I'm based out of Tel Aviv, but I'm actually originally from Boston. So you get the American accent, you get the deep security technology that we've got in Israel. We're a fast-growing startup. You can check the news. We closed a funding round recently, and we're growing fast. What we lack for in size of the company, you're definitely going to find within our platform and the innovation that we bring to the table. So George has a question here. I mentioned Windows Defender, one of the ways we integrate on the endpoint, and he's asking about iOS. So the quick answer is yes, we support iOS. What we do is we integrate with what's called XProtect. That's the native antivirus that's built into Mac. You might not even know it's there, but it does a great job of AV detection. And we integrate directly with that, and we offer threat protection. We offer posture protection. So, is the device encrypted? Is the OS up to date? Is the AV up to date? Is the firewall enabled? So we integrate in iOS in all those ways. And we have our early ransomware detection based on processes, auto runs, early threat detection with, bait or canary files, and then ultimately the isolation capability. So that's all available in Mac. And then I've got another question from an Australian on the call. Must be 5:30 in the morning over there. Thanks, Stephen. The question is around Essential 8 certification for Australia. So Guardz has an interesting perspective on compliance, and this is something we are focused on, and it is an important part of our roadmap. The way we look at compliance is we're not going to be a sort of, click a button and you're magically compliant type of tool. I don't think that's real. I don't think that exists, right? Compliance is always a combination of processes and procedures and documents. And I think the way that Guardz needs to play in the Essential 8 is really just around delivering the evidence and the reports that you need to feel confident that your customers meet the different requirements. So it's not going to be, I use Guardz for Essential 8. It's going to be Guardz is supplying me with the evidence I need to help my customer meet the needs of Essential 8. And the same goes for other compliance, whether that's NIST or CIS, whether it's CMMC for defense contractors, or if it's GDPR, or whatever it is that's important to you, ISO, SOC 2. We want to provide the evidence. Another question here. Guardz remediations following an attack, like quarantining a device. So the way Guardz works is, when a device gets isolated or quarantined, it's always today by an action by the MSP, right? So we alert you, we bubble it up, something has gone wrong, and we give you the ability to take that response action of quarantining it, right? It's an important decision today. We are looking at building some automation around that to let you kind of set when that should happen on its own. But today it's something you do yourself. And then we have some playbooks, so we can help guide you through what happens next. In general, it's, getting out to the user, getting onto that device. It's cut off from any network connection except heartbeat that we keep with Guardz. And then once some of that issues can be mitigated directly, then we can release the network connections and allow packets to flow back through the network. So that's typically how that works. Understanding what is the root cause analysis of that problem. At that moment where you set the isolation, the idea is something's going bad, cut this thing off. And then, we're counting on the MSP on the ground to get in there and try to do the root cause analysis and understand what happened. Great question so far. And Steve, 5:35 in the morning. Good morning to you. All right, great. Guys, this has been a nice experience for me. Hope everyone enjoyed. And I look forward to the next one. So stay safe, stay secure, stay on guard.